Hello, guys, and welcome to the first video in this interview series where we are going to be looking at example reasons as to why students were rejected from medical and dental school and also dive into some real interview mark schemes. And what we're trying to give you here is an insight into the behind the scenes processes that universities will go through to decide whether to give you guys an interview offer or not. So let's get into it and look at the agenda for today. So it's a twofold agenda where we're going to look at the typical mark scheme criteria used by universities, and we're going to look at a range of different medical and dental school mark schemes and see the factors that they're considering when they give you a place. The next thing that we'll look at is some reasons why students in the past have been rejected, and from looking at the mark schemes and looking at the reasons for rejections, what we'll do is we'll pull together a list of definitely do not do things to do in your own interview. And given that you're in an early stage of your application process, now is the time to learn about the mistakes of your predecessors and put processes in place and preparation in place so that you don't fall into the same traps. So let's have a look at some typical mark scheme criteria. This is the first one from Barts and the London, and these are widely and readily available from Freedom of Information requests. And here we can see that they looked at 4 factors, and you were given a mark out of 5 for each one of them. So that means that you would have gotten 16 marks from the first 4 sections, and actually there's a 5th section where they give you a global score for your total performance. So here, number 1 was intellectual ability. That basically just means how smart you came across and how well researched you came across. Number 2 was your commitment and interest. So that might be your work experience, but other things that you can do to show that you've actually taken time to explore the realities of medicine, doing massive online open courses, doing an EPQ, doing some form of research, speaking to doctors and dentists. So this can be anything, but you have to show that commitment and level of interest. And part of this is also the way in which you communicate. How much energy and enthusiasm do you have when you talk about medicine? And just the way that you speak about the career often gives away a lot about how committed and interested you are. So if you're someone that's explored the challenges of medical school and the challenges of being a doctor, or the same for dentistry, then that's going to shine even more than someone who hasn't. So this is quite a global mark scheme because it was probably a panel style interview at the time. But you can see that they really want to make sure that you've done your research into medicine and you know what you're getting yourself into. And that's why your work experience is such an important thing to reference. Number 3 is evidence of teamwork and leadership skills. So this is now where you tie in your volunteering and your extracurriculars to prove that you've got them. Number 4 is communication skills and empathetic traits. So it would be useful to have some stories about where you've helped someone or where you've given back to your community, because often those are the times where communication and empathy are really shown. So number 2, we have Cardiff. Now they have two different things that they look at. Number 1 is ability to cope with the station. So that's just how well did you do in the station and how did you handle the pressure. And number 2 is your communication skills. So really, this is just summarizing 2 words: knowledge and communication. So half of your interview prep, guys, should be going towards developing your communication skills. So you should definitely have some method where you actively review the way you come across and get someone else to review it, as well as your own thoughts on your communication, and find ways to get even better. So a good technique that I would advise is if you were to record yourself doing an interview question and then watch it back and see what things you can tailor and tweak about your communication, and also send those videos to someone else so that they can comment on not just the stuff you're saying, but the way you're coming across and how you make people feel. The third one is Nottingham. So starting the interview, they look for 3 things: your motivation, your empathy, and your communication skills. So can you start to see that there's a bit of a pattern behind all of these mark schemes? It's always the same thing: good motivation and evidence of exploration of the career, having good communication and empathy skills. So universally, the universities are looking for the same thing. So you now know where to focus your energy towards. Showing that you can communicate is half the game. The next thing that they do in terms of when they decide whether to give you an offer is, again, weigh those 3 factors up. But what they'll do is they'll get different assessors to give you a mark each, and then they make a joint decision. So in the case of Nottingham here, they either thought that you met all the criteria, that you met most of the criteria, had some of the criteria, and generally you probably want to be in the A and B region to be scoring the offer. And then they make a final decision on whether to offer you a place, to reserve you, or reject you. Now, this one is a dental insight, and what we have here is feedback from a university on a station in an MMI that was specifically titled Motivation and Insight. Now, have a read of it yourself, but here are some key quotes that show how you can prove that you've got a good level of motivation for medicine or dentistry. Number one, sufficiently researched. That means that you need to have given evidence in your answer that you've taken multiple different steps to research the career. That could be through reading, that could be through work experience, that could be through talks. Now, one resource isn't enough. Often it's more, and that's why they also say they're looking for a variety of resources being referenced. Number three, for them, they also define that motivation for dentistry or medicine comes under two things. It's about exploring the challenges of the career and also the opportunities. Now, what does that mean? Challenges just mean the negatives of the career. What are the struggles for a typical doctor or dentist? And opportunities might mean the pathways that are open after you graduate. So it would be good to be well researched into what the pathway of a doctor or dentist looks like, or the different directions they can take. It also means what are the good things about the day-to-day job, and these are, you should have multiple points for these because you might be asked about it in an interview. It wouldn't be insensible for them to say what are the challenges of a career, or what are the cons of a career, and what are the pros of the career. So be ready to answer those questions. And explored a wide range of issues. Now, to me, that means that you actually appreciate the current hot topics and affairs that are going on in the NHS at the moment. So that's something you should research. And the final 2 points are about you. They want to see that you've been in real life situations where you have seen experiences that have made you decide whether you want to be a doctor or a dentist. And that means that you need to reference your work experience regularly in your answers. Okay, so that's a habit you should be getting into. And when you talk about your work experience, they want to see their own learning. That means your own authentic reflections. And that's why it's a really good exercise to sit down with all your work experience cases that you would have seen and reflect on what the learning was from each one. That's some of the best prep you can do for your interviews, because once you have those points and you can eloquently put them across, you are going to be in a really good position to answer motivation and insight questions. And by the way, at most universities, there will be no interview that doesn't happen without testing your motivation for the career in some way. So this is a must thing. This is a must to prepare for. Here's another university, and this is their criteria. And they deemed a global judgment to decide whether you were suitable for the profession. And here we can see that if you had 3 scores of above 4 or more, you would get the offer. Now, all that means is if you were thought to be suitable for the profession by most people, or even suitable with a bit more development needed, you were probably good enough to get an offer. Now, this teaches us that they aren't expecting perfection, because you're not expected to be completely suitable for the profession. You may be lacking in a few departments, but overall, if you have done the research and you do have the skills, then you might be definitely suitable in the domains of your communication skills and your wider reading. But maybe you're lacking on your team working skills, and you weren't as strong in a station about your hobbies and your interests. But overall, it can balance out and still give you an offer. So there we've explored some of the university mark schemes. Now let's dive into some real reasons as to why students have been rejected. And we've pulled these from real quotes from our previous students that unfortunately were unlucky. So let's have a look. Number 1, not scoring a high enough mark. Now, the interesting thing here is that a lot of universities are now moving to a model where they will give you a mark for every single station out of, I don't know, let's say 15. Well, yeah, in this case, it is 15, isn't it? And you obviously need to meet some sort of cutoff number to get an offer. Now, in this case, 76 out of 90 wasn't high enough. And that shows us that as a percentage, we really need to be aiming for 80% plus at least in order to secure offers. But often I've seen universities where you've needed to score above 90%. Now, that means that you need an almost perfect performance. And the reason why those percentages tend to be so high is because of the predictability of the stations. Let's have a look at the things that were assessed in this role play. Skills of a doctor. That's something you should be prepared for. Judgment and prioritization scenario. Being able to see a list of people with different medical problems and prioritize who needs what the most, and having a logical thought process to it, but an ethical one as well. Communication and ability to empathize. Communication and ability to empathize, again, one was a spoken one-to-one scenario and one was a scenario where you may have had to act, so a role play. Judgment and prioritization, again, problem solving and communication. So the types of stations that you should be doing in your prep should be mimicking these styles of questions, and if you do enough of them, what will start to happen is you develop a strategy towards role plays or a strategy towards showing off your communication skills, and that can be reproduced in the actual interview to give you a predictably high score. So here is another quote, and this person had an inadequate insight into the hot topics, and the university says that you discussed issues relating to access to NHS dentistry, but the interviewer noted that you could have given more detail about health issues. To improve your performance, we would suggest dedicating more time to keeping up to date with current affairs, particularly how current affairs affect dental services. So this is someone that just hadn't read into the hot topics. Now, we have a list of all the hot topics that you need to study for your interviews. If you want to find out what those are, give us a DM and we'll send them over to you. But it's also really important to engage with websites like BBC Health and dentistry.co.uk. And there are apps for this stuff, guys. Whenever you get these apps, you can put your notifications on, and every time there's a new news article, go ahead and just read the headlines. Certain things will keep popping up again and again and again, and often those tend to be the topical issues. So go and read into them. And often these articles are only 1 to 2 minute reads. So if you download that literally right now, and you read 30 to 40 articles passively up until the point of your interview, you're probably going to be prepared or have enough knowledge to answer anything on any hot topic they show at you, because you're regularly consuming the hot topics in the news as of right now. Poor motivation to pursue the career. So another university said that the interviewer noted that you need to reflect more on your reasons as to why you wish to study dentistry. Now, it seems quite an obvious thing, and even when we look back at the mark scheme, one of the reflections that we had was that you need to be sharing your own learning. So it's all well and good getting the work experience and doing the wider reading and doing the EPQs and going on the courses, but if you're not stopping and pausing and telling the interviewer what you learnt, that's a difference. So you can say, yes, I have done 7 weeks of work experience and I read 3 books and I did 4 EPQs, but if you just stop there, you're not reflecting and exploring the learning with the interviewer. You need to say, and this is what I learned, and insert the lessons. And those lessons can be about anything: the skills of a dentist or doctor, the roles and responsibilities, the challenges, the ethical duties, the a hot topic that might have come up, insight into technology and advancements. There's so much scope for things to talk about, but you can't be shallow. You need to dive deeper into the insight you've gained. Okay, the next one is, again, an inadequate insight into the hot topics. So let's have a read of this. It's extremely important that applicants who wish to undertake a degree in dentistry are able to effectively and appropriately communicate with a range of people, as well as being able to demonstrate an insight into how other people would think, feel, and respond in a range of situations. And if you want to improve for your interviews, then you should work on your communication skills by seeking out opportunities to interact and talk with as many people from a range of different backgrounds. So again, can you see how the feedback and the mark scheme directly work together? Half of the mark schemes are always generally talking about communication skills. And for this student, the only feedback they got was go back out there and improve your communication. And that's why the tips that we advised, where you sit down and you record yourself giving an interview answer, and then you reflect on what your strengths are with communication and what your weaknesses are so important, because they'll expose you in ways that you've not seen before. So I know this says insight into hot topics, but I think we should change this one to poor communication. And speaking of poor communication, here is another example, but not necessarily with the words that were spoken, but the demeanor of the student. So this university said, you performed relatively well in your interview. However, there were particular stations which you did not perform that well in. The station that has been noted that you require particular improvement in is the role-playing station. The interviewer noted that you struggled to make eye contact and cut the interview off a few times. So that means when you have a role-play acted scenario, if it comes up in your interview, make sure you're making eye contact. That's something they're looking for. Make sure you're listening and avoiding interruptions. And also monitor things like your tone. When you speak to this person, soften it down, be more gentle, and don't become a confrontational person. These role plays are designed to make you feel something. Pressure is often the common emotion, or they're a test of your empathy skills. So you need to balance those tests out by bringing your empathetic demeanor and also bringing your calm demeanor, so that when they put pressure on you, you don't fold, but you know that it's just a simulation. And really, the best thing you can do for yourself is be kind, caring, and communicate very gently, whilst giving the actor your full attention through your eyes, your body language, and with your hands. And if you do that, you should be fine. So here are the take-home points. Make sure you're reviewing your communication skills. Ensure that you've got a strong reason for doing medicine or dentistry and you can back it up with evidence. Ensure you've read about the current hot topics in medicine and dentistry. Do stations that test your empathy, but also problem-solving skills. Be able to explain the challenges of the career and reference from a variety of different sources. So don't just say that you've learned something from one place. If in an interview station or in a panel interview, you can pull on multiple different references, a book you've read, work experience you've done, a real life interaction, speaking to doctors or dentists, insert more different sources of information, then you're only going to impress them more and show that you've done the research. But remember, with stating all of those things, make sure you talk about the things you learned, because that's what reflection is. So we'll wrap up there, guys. And the final message I have is that our interview journey program is the best way to train for interviews. We offer over 25 hours of live coaching, 40 plus hours of tutorials, and mentorship from world-leading healthcare clinicians who come on and believe in this course. This course is also backed by some of the senior people in the NHS and multiple doctors and dentists. Over the year, we've seen hundreds of people get in with this course, and the best way to find out about it is either go to our Instagram or go to our website and see if we're taking applications. Generally, the course starts every year in October, and we don't have spaces after that. So now is the time to go and check if you can get a spot. Thank you for watching, and hopefully we'll see you on the interview journey.